What happens when one of Hollywood's most private and principled stars sits down with a host known for asking the hardest questions on daytime television? The answer is an explosion that nobody saw coming. Angelina Jolie walked onto The View, set expecting a conversation about her humanitarian work. But what she got instead was a confrontation that would leave the studio audience in stunned silence and the internet absolutely shattered. This wasn't your typical celebrity interview. This was a masterclass in tension, and it all started to unravel within the first 60 seconds. Before we get into exactly what was said that caused Angelina to erupt, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us whose side you're on, because trust me, you're going to have an opinion by the end of this. The introduction seemed normal enough. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed Angelina to the table with the usual warmth and professionalism, and the other hosts smiled as the actress took her seat. But Sunny Hostin had a different energy. While the others were exchanging pleasantries, Sunny was flipping through notes, her expression serious, almost prosecutorial. Angelina noticed immediately. You could see it in the way her shoulders tensed ever so slightly, the way her smile became just a fraction more guarded. Whoopi started with a softball question about Angelina's latest film project, and the actress answered gracefully, talking about the creative process and the importance of storytelling. But before she could finish her thought, Sunny cut in, not with a question, but with a statement, a challenge, really. Angelina, I want to pivot here for a second, Sunny said, her tone sharp and direct. You've built this entire persona around humanitarianism and advocacy, traveling to refugee camps, working with the United Nations, positioning yourself as this voice for the voiceless. But there are people who say that's exactly what it is, a persona, that you use these causes as a way to rehabilitate your image, especially after some of the more controversial moments in your personal life. How do you respond to that? The table went quiet. Joy Behar's eyebrows shot up. Sarah Haynes shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Even Whoopi looked caught off guard. But Angelina didn't flinch. She took a breath, composed herself, and responded with measured calm. I think it's unfortunate, Angelina began, that in our culture, when a woman, especially a woman in the public eye, dedicates her life to causes that matter, there are always people who want to diminish that work by questioning her motives. I've spent 2 decades working in the field, not just showing up for photo opportunities, but actually doing the work. I've sat with survivors of war crimes, I've advocated for policy changes at the highest levels of government, and I've used whatever platform I have to amplify voices that otherwise wouldn't be heard. If people want to call that a persona, that says more about them than it does about me. It was a strong answer, diplomatic but firm. Most hosts would have nodded and moved on, but not Sunny. But you have to admit, Sunny pressed, leaning forward, that the timing of some of your humanitarian work has been awfully convenient. Right around the time certain tabloid stories were at their peak, suddenly there you were in Cambodia or Sudan. It's not hard to see why people might question whether this is genuine advocacy or strategic PR. Now you could feel the shift in the room. This wasn't just a tough question anymore. This was an accusation. Angelina's jaw tightened. Her hands, which had been resting calmly on the table, now gripped the edge ever so slightly. Strategic PR, Angelina repeated, her voice quieter now, but with an edge. Is that what you think I've been doing? You think the children I've adopted, the refugees I've sat with, the policies I've fought to change, that's all been strategic PR? I'm saying, Sunny clarified, though her tone didn't soften, that perception matters. And the perception, fairly or not, is that some celebrities use activism as a shield. They do just enough to be able to say they care, but not enough to actually sacrifice anything meaningful. And when your life has been as tabloid-driven as yours has been, it's fair to ask whether the activism is genuine or whether it's image management. Angelina laughed, but it wasn't a warm laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes right before someone loses their patience entirely. "You want to talk about sacrifice?" Angelina said, her voice rising now. "Let's talk about sacrifice. Let's talk about the fact that I've spent months away from my children to be in conflict zones because I believe in the work. Let's talk about the fact that I've used my own money, millions of dollars, not for mansions or yachts, but to fund education programs and legal aid for displaced families. Let's talk about the fact that I've testified before Congress, that I've pushed for changes to international law, that I've done things that have nothing to do with cameras or publicity because they needed to be done. But sure, let's reduce all of that to tabloid PR, because it fits your narrative." The studio audience was dead silent now. This had gone from an interview to a confrontation, and everyone could feel it. Sunny, to her credit, didn't back down. "I'm not trying to reduce your work," Sunny said, though the defensive note in her voice suggested she knew exactly how her questions were landing. "I'm trying to have an honest conversation about celebrity activism and whether it's always what it claims to be. You're a public figure, Angelina. That means your work is open to scrutiny, just like anyone else's." "Scrutiny is fine," Angelina shot back. "But what you're doing isn't scrutiny. What you're doing is cynicism, disguised as journalism. You're suggesting that because I've had a public personal life, my humanitarian work must be fake. You're implying that women like me can't possibly care about something bigger than ourselves without some ulterior motive. And honestly, Sunny, I expected better from you. You're a smart woman. You know the difference between holding someone accountable and just tearing them down for ratings." That last word, ratings, landed like a bomb. Sunny's expression hardened. "Ratings," Sunny repeated, her voice icy now. "You think I'm doing this for ratings? Angelina, I ask tough questions because that's my job. And if you can't handle being asked about the contradictions in your public image, maybe you shouldn't be sitting at this table." Angelina stood up, not dramatically, not with a flourish, but calmly, deliberately. She looked Sunny directly in the eyes. "I can handle tough questions," Angelina said quietly, but with absolute steel in her voice. "What I can't handle is sitting here and being accused of exploiting human suffering for my own benefit by someone who's never spent a single day doing the kind of work I do. You want to question my motives? Fine. But don't you dare sit there and suggest that my work, the work that has consumed my life for 20 years, is anything less than genuine. Because that's not journalism, Sunny. That's just cruelty." The room was frozen. Whoopi tried to interject, to bring some calm back to the table. But before she could say anything, Sunny spoke again. "If you're so confident in your work," Sunny said, her voice steady but laced with challenge, "then why are you so defensive about being asked about it?" Angelina smiled, but it was a smile that could cut glass. "I'm not defensive, Sunny," she said. "I'm just done pretending that what you're doing here is in good faith." Whoopi finally managed to break through the tension, her voice cutting through the thick silence that had settled over the studio. Okay, let's just take a breath here," Whoopi said, holding up both hands like a referee, trying to separate two fighters. "We're all adults. We can have a difficult conversation without it turning into something else. Sunny, maybe we can approach this from a different angle. Angelina, please, sit back down." Angelina remained standing for a moment longer, her eyes still locked on Sunny, before slowly lowering herself back into her chair. But the energy had fundamentally shifted. This wasn't a friendly daytime talk show anymore. This was a battlefield. Sunny, however, wasn't ready to let it go. If anything, Angelina's accusation about good faith seemed to have lit a fire under her. "You say I'm not operating in good faith," Sunny said, her voice controlled but intense. "But I'm asking questions that millions of people have. Questions about authenticity, about whether the celebrity industrial complex has turned activism into just another brand opportunity. And the fact that you're reacting this strongly tells me I've touched a nerve. You've touched a nerve, Angelina confirmed. Her composure still intact, but her words coming faster now, sharper. Because what you're suggesting is insulting, not just to me, but to every single person I've worked with in the field. When you reduce my work to a branding exercise, you're also reducing the experiences of the refugees I've advocated for, the survivors I've amplified, the children I've tried to protect. You're making it all about me and my image, when it's never been about that. But it is about you, Sunny countered. Whether you like it or not, you're the story. You're the one with the platform, the fame, the access. And when someone with that much privilege steps into spaces of suffering, we have to ask whether they're helping or whether they're just using those people's pain to make themselves look good. Joy Behar jumped in, trying to add some levity. Sunny, I think maybe we can acknowledge that Angelina has done some real work without assuming the worst about her intentions. But Sunny shook her head. I'm not assuming the worst. I'm asking her to defend her best. There's a difference. Angelina let out a long breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter, but somehow more dangerous. You want me to defend my best? She said slowly. Fine. Let me tell you what my best looks like. My best looks like sitting in a tent in the middle of a refugee camp in Jordan at 3 a.m. with a mother who just watched her entire family get killed, holding her while she sobbed because there was nothing else I could do. My best looks like testifying in front of committees about sexual violence in war zones, knowing that every word I said would be picked apart by people like you who would question whether I really cared or whether I was just there for attention. My best looks like adopting children who had no one, and raising them, and loving them, and building a life for them, and then having people suggest that even that was a publicity stunt. Her voice cracked slightly on that last part, just for a second, and you could see the raw emotion underneath the carefully maintained exterior. And you know what the worst part is? Angelina continued. The worst part is that no matter what I do, no matter how much time I spend, no matter how much money I give, no matter how many fights I fight, there will always be people like you sitting in a comfortable studio in New York City, questioning whether any of it was real. Because, heaven forbid, a woman with a public profile actually care about something other than herself. Sunny didn't blink. This isn't about you being a woman, Angelina. This is about you being a celebrity. And celebrities have a track record of performative activism. That's just a fact. And humanitarians have a track record of actually changing lives. Angelina fired back. That's also a fact. But you don't seem interested in that fact. You're only interested in the narrative that makes me look like a fraud. Sarah Haynes tried to intervene, her voice gentle. I think what Sunny might be trying to get at is just that we live in a time where people are more skeptical of institutions and public figures. It's not personal. It's just where we are, culturally. But Angelina wasn't having it. It is personal, Sarah. It became personal the moment Sunny suggested that my work was image management. You can dress it up as cultural skepticism all you want, but what she's doing is character assassination, and she knows it. Sunny leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Character assassination is a strong accusation. I'm a journalist asking questions. If you can't handle that, maybe the issue isn't with my questions. I've handled war criminals, Sunny, Angelina said, her voice like ice. I think I can handle your questions. What I can't handle is the dishonesty. You're not asking questions to get answers. You're asking questions to create a moment, to get a reaction. And congratulations, you got one. Is this what you wanted? Is this good television for you? The audience was completely silent. Even the crew members had stopped moving. This had gone so far beyond a normal interview that no one quite knew what to do. Whoopi tried once more to regain control. Ladies, I think we need to remember that we're all on the same side here. We all want to make the world better. We're just coming at it from different perspectives. But Sunny wasn't done. I respect your work, Angelina. I do. But respect doesn't mean I can't ask hard questions. And the question I'm asking is simple. How do you separate genuine activism from celebrity branding when they look exactly the same from the outside? Angelina's eyes narrowed. They don't look the same if you're actually paying attention. Genuine activism is measured in outcomes, not headlines. It's measured in lives changed, policies implemented, systems challenged. Celebrity branding is measured in Instagram likes and magazine covers. If you can't tell the difference between those two things, then you're not looking hard enough. Or maybe, Sunny said, her voice taking on an almost professorial tone, I'm looking exactly hard enough to see that even genuine activism can be commodified when it's attached to a celebrity brand. Even if you started with pure intentions, Angelina, the machine around you has turned it into something else. And I think you know that. I think that's why you're so angry right now. That was the breaking point. Angelina's composure, which had been holding by a thread, finally snapped. You want to know why I'm angry? She said, her voice rising to a level the studio had never heard before. I'm angry because I've spent 20 years of my life trying to do something that matters, and I'm sitting here being lectured by someone who thinks activism is something you can analyze from a distance like it's a case study. You want to talk about commodification? Let's talk about how daytime television commodifies real issues by turning them into sound bites and hot takes. Let's talk about how shows like this one invite people on under the pretense of a real conversation and then ambush them with gotcha questions designed to go viral. Don't you dare sit there and lecture me about authenticity when this entire format is built on manufactured conflict. The camera caught Sunny's face, and for the first time, she looked genuinely taken aback. But she recovered quickly. This isn't manufactured, Sunny said. This is real. You're upset because I'm holding up a mirror and you don't like what you see. No, Angelina said, standing up again. And this time, it was clear she wasn't sitting back down. I'm upset because you're holding up a funhouse mirror and calling it journalism. There's a difference, Sunny. And the fact that you can't see that is exactly the problem. Whoopi stood as well, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. Angelina, please, let's not end it like this. But Angelina was already removing her microphone, her hands trembling slightly with anger and adrenaline. I came here in good faith, she said, looking directly at Sunny one last time. I came here to talk about work that actually matters to me. But you didn't want a conversation. You wanted a takedown. And I'm not going to sit here and give you that satisfaction. Sunny finally stood as well, her expression hardening. Running away from tough questions isn't a good look, Angelina. Angelina stopped, turned back, and the look on her face was absolutely withering. I've faced tougher questions from warlords, Sunny. This isn't me running away. This is me refusing to participate in your performance. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Sunny's face flushed, and for a moment it looked like she might respond, but Whoopi quickly stepped between them, physically and verbally. Okay, we need to take a break, Whoopi announced, looking directly at the camera. We'll be right back. But Angelina shook her head. No, we won't. I won't be here when you come back. The producers were scrambling now. You could hear frantic whispers from behind the cameras, but Angelina was already walking off the set. Except she stopped. She turned around one more time, and what happened next was something nobody expected. You know what, Sunny? Angelina said, her voice steady now, almost calm, but with an intensity that was somehow more powerful than the anger. I'm going to give you what you actually wanted. Not a fight, not a viral moment, but an actual answer to your actual question. You want to know if my activism is real? Let me tell you something I've never said publicly before. The entire studio froze. Sunny remained standing, her arms still crossed, but you could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Angelina walked back toward the table, but she didn't sit down. She stood there, center stage, and spoke directly to the camera. 3 years ago, Angelina began, I was in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I was there working with survivors of sexual violence, women and children who had been through unimaginable trauma. And there was this one girl, she was 14 years old, and she had been assaulted by soldiers from a militia group. She was pregnant. She was terrified. And she asked me, through a translator, if I could help her, if I could make sure her baby would be safe, that she would be safe. Angelina's voice was completely controlled, but you could see the emotion in her eyes, the weight of the memory. And I promised her I would try, Angelina continued. I worked with local organizations, with international legal groups, to try to get her into a protected facility. I used every contact I had, every resource at my disposal. But the bureaucracy, the corruption, the sheer difficulty of operating in a conflict zone, it took time. Too much time. She paused, taking a breath, and the silence in the studio was absolute. By the time we got the clearance to move her, the militia had come back. They killed her. They killed her because she had talked to outsiders, because she had asked for help, because people like me had drawn attention to her situation and made her a target. The weight of those words settled over everyone. Joy had tears in her eyes. Sarah looked down at the table. Even Sunny's expression had shifted, the defensiveness replaced by something more complicated. So when you ask me if my activism is real, Angelina said, looking directly at Sunny now, when you ask me if I'm just doing this for my image, I think about that girl. I think about the promise I made to her and how I failed her, and I think about every other person I've met, every other story I've carried, every other fight I've tried to fight. And I know, with absolute certainty, that this work is the realest thing in my life. More real than any movie I've ever made, more real than any headline about my personal life, more real than this conversation we're having right now. Sunny opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. For the first time in the entire interview, she seemed genuinely at a loss for words. I don't do this work because it's easy, Angelina went on. I don't do it because it makes me look good. I do it because I've seen things that I can't unsee. I've met people whose suffering demands a response. And yes, I use my platform, my fame, my resources, whatever I have, to try to make a difference. Is it perfect? No. Do I make mistakes? Constantly. But is it real? Is it genuine? You're damn right it is. She picked up her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and looked at each of the hosts in turn. I came here because I thought we could have a real conversation about real issues, Angelina said. But instead, you wanted to debate whether I'm authentic enough to care about those issues. The people I work with, they don't care whether my activism passes your purity test. They care whether I show up, whether I fight for them, whether I use whatever voice I have to make their lives even slightly better. And I'm going to keep doing that, whether you believe in it or not. Sunny finally spoke, and her voice was different now, less combative, almost subdued. That story you just told, about the girl in Congo, I had no idea. I'm sorry that happened. Angelina looked at her for a long moment. You wouldn't have known because I don't talk about it. Because some things are too painful, too private, too sacred to turn into talking points on a television show. But you pushed, and you pushed, and you questioned my motives. And you left me no choice but to bear something that I've carried alone for 3 years, just to prove to you that I'm not the fraud you seem to think I am. I never said you were a fraud, Sunny protested, but her voice lacked the conviction it had earlier. You didn't have to say it, Angelina replied. It was in every question you asked, every implication you made. You're a woman who has fought against systems of oppression your entire career. We should be allies. But instead, you used this platform to tear me down. And for what? Sunny's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Sarah Haynes spoke up, her voice sincere. Angelina, for what it's worth, I think what you do is incredible. And I think a lot of people watching this are going to see exactly what happened here. Angelina nodded at her, a small gesture of acknowledgement. Thank you, Sarah. Then she looked at Sunny one last time. I hope someday You understand the difference between accountability and cruelty, between asking tough questions and just trying to take someone down. Sunny's eyes flashed with anger again. You don't get to walk out of here and act like you're above criticism. I never said I was above criticism, Angelina shot back. I said I deserve better than this. You could have asked me about the actual issues I care about, the policies I'm trying to change, the people I'm trying to help, but you didn't want any of that. You wanted a fight. She headed for the exit, and this time no one tried to stop her. But just before she disappeared, she turned back one final time. You want to question my authenticity, Sunny? Fine. But while you're sitting here in your studio debating whether I really care, I'll be back out in the field, doing the actual work. And I'll be thinking about that girl in Congo, and all the others like her, because that's what's real to me. Not this, not you, not any of this. And with that, Angelina Jolie walked off the View set, leaving behind a stunned audience, a shell-shocked panel of hosts, and a confrontation that would be talked about for years to come. The camera cut back to the hosts, and Whoopi tried to regain some semblance of control. Well, that was intense. We're going to take a break. But as the show cut to commercial, you could see Sunny sitting there, staring at the spot where Angelina had been standing, her expression unreadable. What was clear was that this wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a genuine clash of perspectives, a collision between someone who lives the work and someone who questions it from a distance. And in the end, Angelina Jolie had made her position absolutely clear. She wasn't there to be cross-examined. She wasn't there to justify her life's work to someone who had never walked in her shoes. She was there to speak her truth, and when that wasn't respected, she did exactly what she needed to do. She left. So what do you think? Was Sunny right to push Angelina on the authenticity of celebrity activism, or did she cross a line? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think Angelina was justified in walking out, or should she have stayed and continued the conversation? Let us know, because this debate is far from over.